90-day plans that we've set up, they all support our school goals. So everybody at our school has a 90-day plan. Everybody, all administrators, and it all rolls up into our main school goals. Our high school and our K-8 principals, I can say their names, Angie and Becky, their schools, they drive everybody else's goals, because our goal as a school is academic achievement, right? So Luann, John, and Shelly, I'll say probably are some that we've had to make sure that that is a focus, because, you know, especially John, I have to shout out John. I've been working through this process, operations, especially coming from operations. I know how excluded that can feel. And where we have one goal, one team, one mind, that's the purpose behind these 90-day goals. They all roll up and support. And just last week we had a meeting, and I'll flip to, and I'll talk about that here in a second, where we were very transparent in all of our plans and all worked together. Our team was very brave and got up and showed their plan and asked for reflection. Becky, Angie, do you need anything else added to my plan to support your goals? It's really awesome to be a part of. And so that is over here on the slide where it says admin team quarterly reports. So we've kind of already done a quarterly report as our admin team as an update on our 90-day plans. That link is not live, I'm sure, on the slide deck it will be. You can't click it, obviously. But when we send that out, that houses all of our 90-day plans. And I would highly encourage anybody to jump in there, spend 5 minutes browsing to get a better picture of what the 90-day plans are and how detailed and action item specific they get in their plans. And I'm just really proud of our team of the impact that we've made already in this first quarter by aligning our efforts and our goals. So we have a whole bunch of things built in. So starting on the left, our 101s, we have a stand-up call. So William started this as interim as a stand-up call, and it was Big Rocks, and our team loved it. And we do Monday, Friday, right? Just recently we made a change. Now stand-up calls not Big Rocks anymore. Stand-up calls are the 3 action items that are from your plans. And can I tell you, I fail at this. This is one of the hardest things for me now, and it's really good to make sure that I'm making and clearing time to make sure I'm providing actions to the school that is in our plan that we've determined we need to be successful. So just a few small tweaks around our school that we're just in this big alignment effort that we all know what our school goals are, and we're all taking actions that will directly impact those goals. So that's what the 90-day plan is. I wanted to show you, so where do they fit in with PMOs? So our PMOs are all aligned to state accountability. And so that top chart, state accountability, that is our school goal, right? And all of our PMOs support that, and they were written that way this year. I love that change. It's fantastic because that's exactly where our attention needs to be. So the K-8 90-day plan is all about state accountability as well. I think there's one other piece in Angie's plan that has to be there for our early literacy. The state has a huge push on K-3 reading this year. And we have about $120,000 in grant money that could be at risk if we don't meet those goals. So early literacy is a huge part, and that's in Angie's 90-day plan. But other than that, the rest is all state accountability. We'll do that in just a second. High school is a little quirk, as you guys know. Our 90-day plan is also our turnaround plan. We've had to tie that. Our turnaround plan truly drives our school and the high school. So you're going to hear Debbie talk about our PMO goal overviews, and there is overlap in our PMO goals and our turnaround because we're all supporting state accountability as indicated on the chart there. So Becky's going to dive into her turnaround plan and the goals there, but that is where we're at with that one. And then you can see down below, we have all of our district strategies and goals that then support that. So that's kind of the build out, how we're organized this year. So PMOs. So I've tied it in. I wanted to give you a visual a little bit on our accountability and where that ties in. So this is our beautiful little chart of our state accountability. On the left there, it says elementary and middle schools. This is important to note that this all comes from one test. This is our RISE end of year assessment. So 3-8 is our state accountability for K-8, and it's in the one test, growth, proficiency, English learners, and growth of the lowest 25% there. You see the goals on the board, and we wrote our PMO goals around iReady. And Deb's going to share some data on that. But and Deb will talk about this too. Sorry, stealing your thunder, Deb. The methodology there is iReady is an indicator of state achievement. And so that's why we are using that, although our test has changed. That's fun. High school, like everything, it's different and it's complicated. What is the same is our growth, proficiency, English language learner progress, and growth of the lowest 25%. It's all based on a 9th and 10th grade assessment called UTVA Aspire Plus. I heard a new acronym calling it UA Plus, and I thought that's easier I could remember because I could never get all those acronyms or those words right in the right order. So UA Plus is the term we're going to call it these days. UA Plus, and that's just 9th and 10th graders. So they are a huge focus at our school this year. As you can see, they make up a large majority of our school grade. High school graduation shrunk. We have an ACT piece and an advanced coursework piece. So you'll see that these right here on the screen are our PMO goals that Deb will highlight here in just a second. But that just kind of gives a different overview of the why and the tie-in for our PMOs. All right, with that, Deb, you're up.
Hey, I haven't shared a room since I was in college. So this has been Hey, Megan's going to go check her computer. I want to talk about, like Megan said, an overall higher level 30,000-foot view of our goals. So the first one is the predictive data. And as many of you know and have heard through Megan just now, RISE is the new state assessment for grades 3 through 8, and the school assessment we have to give us information on that is iReady. iReady was, aligned with SAGE, and now with RISE being new, smartly so, iReady is saying we're not producing predictive data this year because they don't have any information on it. And so if we go over to that third column of confidence in the predictive score based on iReady to give us information on RISE, we can base it on the fact that iReady was connected to SAGE and was very reliable there. Half of or more of the questions on RISE will be SAGE similar questions. The test blueprints haven't been released, mid-year summative and interim score benchmarks haven't been released. So we do know that they're based on the standards. We do know how our students have done on SAGE. We do know RISE will be parallel with that. So that's what we have to go with right now, and we feel fairly confident that iReady is giving us a good predictor. And I'll show you something that Jenny Wilson was able to get for us. Kudos to her. I think I'm going to send her a dozen cookies for that one. The green row, UA Plus, is our 9th, 10th, like Megan just said. So the assessment for 9th ELA is iReady, and 10th is Summit. Same thing as above. UTVA Aspire Plus is not, we don't have the blueprints out yet. We don't have any interim or benchmarks for it. We do know it's based on the standards, and that's what our teachers are working on very, very hard and right down to the student level, and you'll see when our principals talk to you about that. Math 1 and 2 are teacher created because they know what the standards are. They are strong at knowing how to get to the student level based on what standards they're meeting and not. It's a combination, the UTVA Aspire Plus is a combination of SAGE and ACT questions. So another thing they're pulling in is TMOOC because they have ACT Aspire questions. Our teachers have a lot of experience with SAGE. They're getting training through the state with ACT and ACT Aspire. So our confidence level is based there on our teachers, to be honest. And then ACT is the test for grade 11. TMOOC is what the state has put lots of money and confidence in. Has a direct predictive ACT score, and it's really interesting to me. The students are looking at their baseline in their first interim, and they're looking at what the scores required for the university of their choice, and they're setting their own goals for that. So they know how close they are to meeting their goals, which is not what we want for all of our kids. Let's see. I don't see the chat, so pop in anytime. Just interrupt if you've got some questions. Brag time, iReady reading. This is what Jenny Wilson was able to get from iReady based on her relationship with them, because they were not wanting to say that there's a connection between iReady and this end of year test. but since it's so similar to SAGE, they did this for Jenny. So right now, 60% of our students in grades 3 through 8 in reading are predicted to be proficient at the end of the year, and you can see the grade level breakdown. I know I only have 5 minutes for this, and I could talk for probably 30 on that one chart alone, but it'll be in the information you get if you want to look more closely. Here is that same, but for math, 43%, not a surprise. We knew going into this that math, particularly the further up in our grades, was a struggle to have our students meet proficiency. And you can see how those bar graphs go, so that by 8th grade, we've got 35% predicted to be proficient. High school ELA and math instructional levels, this shows grade 9 and 10. The reason I did instructional levels on this, our teachers are looking at every measure they can and looking at more of a holistic view of how their kids are doing, because we don't have those direct correlations and those test frameworks and so on. So their instructional levels are based on many categories, and for right now, especially our first block, this is what we feel is giving us the strongest information. And you can see ELA, the green is proficient, advanced, light green, dark green, yellow basic, and red below basic. The percentages are at the base of those. You can see where they are. And at the top, I've put 62% of our 9th graders are projected to meet mastery by the end of the year. That's not, are they projected to meet mastery if they took the test right now? Remember, that's projecting that toward the end of the year. We're concerned with our ELA 10 and our Math 2. We knew this was the group that showed the lowest amount of gains last year, so we're putting a lot of attention and energy into them so that we can hopefully increase this 24% in reading and 32% projected in math. And I think Becky's going to be discussing Math 2. Is that right, Becky? So that would be perfect. 11th grade ACT predicted. This is just golden information right here, and Rachel Bellamy is dialing in on it right now. If we looked at, what I did was I took our instructional levels and looked at their predicted ACT scores and got this information. So our advanced students, based on instructional levels, have a range of 28 to 9 on just benchmark and interim ACT. So this is just that first little snapshot in time with an average of 18.7. Our students who are proficient instructional levels range from 20 to 9, and their average is 14.8. And you can see our basic and below basic kids are significantly below and even have no score. So we're working on them as well. But the good news is, look at the difference in the blue and the orange. I know it's too tiny for you to see, but blue is the benchmark and orange is the interim. And it shows this is not ACT points on the side. These are just, straight raw score points, but you can see the gains that the students have made. These are individual students, and I've blocked out this right here, blocked out their student ID numbers, and it's just a snip. It's not everybody, but you can see all the gains the kids are making between the benchmark and the interim, and that's where we have a lot of confidence in seeing that our kids are going to make this kind of score at the end of the year. So we have 50.6% of our 11th graders are projected to score 18 or higher, and 49.4 is like right there, right in the middle of scoring 18 or higher. And Becky will tell you exactly what our goal is, but we've always been really close to the state average on that. So I think I blew more than 5 minutes on that, so let me go fairly quickly here.
Robin had a question real quick, Deb. For the ACT, do they have a cutoff? It's just in the chat. I'm just being the chat monitor.
Oh, thanks, because I can't see the chat. Thank you. What was the question?
Does the ACT have a cutoff? Texas is 19.
A cutoff.
18, right?
18.
18.
I don't know what you mean by cutoff, but
yeah,
the average is 18.
Yeah, it's 18. So the new measurement for state accountability is percent of students scoring 18, composite 18 or higher. So previously, so we've always been competitive to state average on composite, like right there within 1 or 2 points. But on the previous accountability, it was always college level ready benchmark that they had to meet all 4 of those benchmarks. That's hard to do. I don't think I did. Sorry, guys. But I know that's right. That's hard. And so we were getting like 12 out of 150 points for ACT on that. I'm excited for this new one because we've always been around on that composite. We've and we're predicted to do the same with the early numbers. So yeah, good question, Robin. Thanks.
Anything else? Thanks, Angie. Academic excellence goals for K-8, and Angie, feel free to pipe in on any of this. Our baseline goal data is 43% on or above grade level in English language arts. Proficiency or higher through iReady. Let's see, approaching 45%. We would need to have 47 to 49 meeting and exceeding. Our current data shows 60% of our K-8 students in that, so yay green. Math, I'll go through that really quickly. Here's what we're shooting for, 45, 47, and we have 43. Feel confident that we'll meet that goal. High school proficiency for SAGE, 28% based on SAGE, because that's the only thing we have right now to work on that. Meeting or exceeding is a range from 34 to 36, and right now we're looking at 43. The reason we put that in yellow is because, you know, the target isn't real clear, like Becky, yeah, Becky's face right there. The target isn't clear yet. We don't know exactly we're going on if we meet the standards and we address those and yada, yada, right? So, and we do know this is the first quarter. Next quarter, we definitely either that or we'll go down and pick at USBE or something. Don't record that to get that info. So we have more solid data next time.
So when you're saying based on instructional levels, that 43% based on instructional levels, do you mean by looking at the holistic way that you're looking at the students when you're determining their instructional levels, or where is that coming from? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's why it's a yellow.
Which is like their grade books, their student engagement and work in class, and their assessments and their interims.
Yeah.
And that's all, you included the state assessment on that as well?
Yeah.
Their previous scores. Gotcha. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, Becky will drill down into that one. Sorry, did I interrupt somebody?
It's okay, Debbie. I just had a really quick question. All of the data that you're sharing with us, what percent of the students is this data based on? How many students took that assessment?
Well,
I can find that.
Well, Becky, you can answer that. The instructional levels are 100% of the kids, right? ACT, a huge number. If we look back on this one, Becky has percentages. I could get you that, but it's enough to be confident on that one. And Angie, your rates are in the 90s, 94, 96.
Yeah.
I think our interim one was like 80. We wanted to get 85. It was close to 80. It's based on so many data points the instructional levels are, but every kid has an instructional level.
Yeah. And here we go with growth. We can't look at growth with one measure, so we're going to have to wait until next week when we have all of our interims to compare that with. We feel like we're close. We're not going to say it's a red for sure, and we're not going to say that it's a green. So that's to be determined, I guess you could say right here when we evaluate it next week. We're confident that our kids are close to this, but that's not good enough when you want numbers. So we can get that for sure next week when we've got it. Let's see, to the next one. Okay, tag team to Megan.
My computer, I think, might be working in just a minute. We'll see. All right, so I talked about high school grad rate, CTE. I have a next slide that will report on data, but based on where we are, it is really early, but I'm confident that we will meet that mark based on the programs we have in place right now. And then CTE, I got an asterisk there for two reasons. One is I think we're working through a process right now where how we define our CTE students. We got a couple different options, and that's a longer story than what we have time for here. And then the other part of that too is we want to be able to define our CTE students and track our CTE students on how the state will be measuring that. And I am desperate. Everybody's heard me saying this, and my friend that calls me, oh, she butchered my name. Didn't even call me Meredith. Call me something totally different than that. Like, it's awesome. But that's how many times I've emailed her now at the state office asking for our technical accountability manual. Because in that technical accountability manual, it will tell us exactly what a CTE completer is. And that's what I need to know. Jill Hymas pulled some of that data, and I think we are going to be super close. She pulled some historical grades and such and tracked what would be considered a CTE completer in our two pathways, and it was close to 300 students. So moving forward, it's kind of mind blowing right now. So to be determined, asterisk, more information coming, but it's looking really good. I'm really excited with that. And I think next year there's some great plans already we've been thinking about of how we just almost become a school-wide CTE school because it's so beneficial. It's what we're already doing anyways, and it's beneficial for accountability. So this is the scene of the next slide for the data. There's so much data, there's like not one piece of indicator to tell you why we're on track or we're not on track. Sam Arnold's fantastic. He calculates all this. It goes through our current, because we have two different parts we have to track, right? Our current students that we have enrolled and then everybody else that's not here but is going to be a dropout. Basically, he's identified what we need to hit to meet this goal. We're setting it high at 85 is where we'd like to hit. And the goal is that we have 110 students excluded and 212 graduates, and he said it will get us there. So those are the numbers, the goals that we have that we're working to. This that you have in front of you is an October report. He's working on a November report for me. But yeah, you guys know, all of you here, I believe, know about all the good stuff going on in our graduation rate world and grad task force meetings. Just last week, the counselors took a lot of ownership and reformatting this a little bit. It's fun to watch. I think that's the theme you're going to hear in a minute is the ownership and the power in our staff catching some of this vision. And when they take over it, I mean, so much more than what we could ever do as administrators with it. So that's the high school grad rate stuff. Any questions on any of those before I turn over to our fabulous principals? All right, Principal Kreitzer, I'm gonna let you take it away.
I just like, oh, that's me. All right, here we are. I am thrilled to be here today. I feel like I've brought something that will be so much better than what I would do talking. I know we often watch videos in here, but this one, it answers every single bullet point in a demo. It's a little lengthy, but I did trim it down 8 minutes from what they sent me, bless their hearts. But it does so well. And what I really loved about it is it is the result of turning a lot of it over to them and growing a culture of ownership. Because you will see in the next 10 minutes, two teachers. So what this is it's not two different teachers. They're two halftime teachers that make a whole. So that's why they both talk on it. But I'm going to take us out to it with no further ado, and then there'll be 4 or 5 minutes left to discuss some of the other talking points. So in Zoom, you don't have to click a link. I'm just going to put it right up here on the board. But I am going to need someone to stop sharing. So if you could do that, that would be so great.
Yeah, we're working on that one.
Okay.
You know, it's a good day when Angie becomes Miranda sings. Someone could do that.
Somebody could do that. Maybe we'll be clicking a link. I mean, we can. That is not an option. All right, here we go, everyone. This is so exciting. These guys just have my whole heart. Here we go.
All right, hey there, it's Cassie, AC, and Terry Griffin here to talk to you about our MTSS doc and kind of walk you through what we have going on. So here's just kind of a quick overview of our first tab in our data tracking document. On our first tab, we've got all of our students listed with their homeroom teacher. It's just such a great reference for us when we're like needing to contact a homeroom teacher. We just pull that up fast. And then we've got all of their DIBELS scores. In 3rd grade, we're accountable to DIBELS as well for reading and not just iReady and end of level testing. So we have DIBELS data, last year's scores if we have them, and then their beginning of year scores. And then you'll see we've got beginning of year iReady diagnostic information, and we used that information for cycle 1 to decide yes or no if they should be in small groups. You'll see that here. And then we also have Haley McCam, who helps us with our Tier 3 kids and our kids who are in Mark 12 and who need additional support that way. And so she had her own groups, and those are those kids there, and Mrs. Miller has her own group she runs. And so those are those designations. And we have spots for their middle of year, iReady diagnostics, and end of year. And then the formulas are already set up for us to show their growth right now because there's no scores. Obviously their growth is negative because there's no score. Same for end of year, and at the end of the year we can check their growth between, we'll already have beginning to middle, we'll check middle to end, and then growth over the whole year. Gives us a good picture of our students' years, if we're continually progressing or if some crazy things are happening and we need to intervene, we can see those things. And then we get to these fun columns over here. Let me scroll a little farther. For spots for interim. So our most recent small groups are based off of interim 1. And the students that we are accountable for small groups, have scores here. Those who are not applicable either work with Mrs. Miller or Mrs. McCam, and they had their own that they worked with. So we went through and we've got scores for all of our students in here. They're color coordinated. Being color coordinated really helps us quickly identify those kids who were below or well below. And there's spots for the other interims here as well. But what we did is we took that information to our Tier 2 small groups tab. And this is for cycle 2. Cycle 1's up here. It's hidden. I don't know if you really want to see it. We've got more information. So we took all of our students who were below and well below on that first interim to get this cycle 2 data, and we sorted them. We had 2 different standards. We sorted their scores of those kids who were low between the 2 standards so we could get a better picture of what they were specifically struggling with, because some kids struggled in both, but a lot of them struggled in one or the other. So we have their scores here, and you can see they're broken down by our standards. And we'll work with this first set for 3 weeks and then the second set for 3 weeks. And we communicated that to the learning coaches, whether they were only invited for a certain set of 3 weeks, the entire 6 weeks, or the last set of 3 weeks. And then we have spots here where we can track their post-test scores to see their growth, to know if our instruction helped or not. We obviously hope that it does, but this will be proof that it does. And because there's 2 of us and we share a job, we split days that we teach. And so there's notes on there about that as well. But that's kind of hopefully to kind of boost their confidence. It might have been a little bit easier of a read so that we could focus on the skills that we were teaching. And then the next week, we did a 3rd grade story, and then we reviewed, and we'll do a post-test, and then we review the post-test with the students. So it's nice to be able to see our instructional map and know exactly what we are teaching on what days. The next tab that we have in our MTSS document is where we track our students and the assignments that they are doing in the online school. So we know that we can go in and view students through the gradebook, and we can check those different units for the whole class, or we can check it for students. I really like having this list of my entire class so that I can see if there are any trends or patterns with students. So we've got our unit scores where I can keep track of their overall unit score. I also go through here to keep track of the lessons. So like here I can see these are the lessons that these kids are missing. If it's blue or purple, purple just lets me know like, hey, I need to reach out to them. These lessons are done, or see if they've caught up. If I've changed it to blue, it just lets me know that I've reached out to them, to let them know that I see they're behind and if there's anything that I can do to help. Or lots of times they'll reply and say, hey, this happened, but it just lets me know exactly what's going on with the students. Or if I'm not getting responses, I can go to the homeroom teacher. I can look and totally see if there's any notes or reach out to that family as best I can. So it's just nice because I can also see if they're failing a lesson. If there's lots of lessons that are 80% or below, I can check and see if I need to make a referral or if it was just that particular unit that they struggled with. So I like being able to see this at a glance. It helps me keep my notes all in one place so that I can see what's going on with those students. And then I have a tab here for spelling as well. So same thing, it lets me see all of my students at a glance. I've got it coded by color so that, again, I can know if they're in a different class. I can see if they're missing lessons or if they're failing. I've been able to reach out to some families, like if they're consistently not passing scores, I can reach out to them and kind of see, hey, if there's something going on, what can I help with? Do I need to make a referral? And all of that. So, it's nice to have it all in one spot so that I'm not going back and forth waiting for things to load in the online school. And I just check this sometimes daily to see if they're staying up with the daily plan as well. And same thing, like I email out students who failed or are behind, and some of the students will respond back, and sometimes they just needed a little extra help from their learning coach. Sometimes they need extra help from me because, let's face it, learning how to write as a third grader, as any grade elementary student, is hard. So I have held student sessions one-on-one to help them with whether it's a writing assignment or a writing concept that they don't understand. And then there's notes in here. This unit I had decided to focus on the positive and sent thank you emails when they were done that day on the pacing guide that they were supposed to be done with the unit. I sent thank you emails like thanks for being on track. And then the next or the last few parts of our MTSS doc focus more on the DIBELS end of things. We have a goal to progress monitor every one of our students at least 3 times between assessments. And then obviously we still follow the goal of our red kids get progress monitored. Well, for us, we do it every time we progress monitor. So they usually get a couple of times a month. The goal's 2, but we usually end up with 3 or 4. But we progress monitor so that we can see, okay, we started out the year, we started making progress, we've taken a step back. Do we need to step in and intervene? Do they need extra resources? Was it just a bad day? And we can take that data and look through. And like Terry mentioned before, we can access this in MClass, but it's a lot easier for us to have all our data in one spot quickly at a glance that we can compare all the different aspects. You may have noticed this name of this particular student hasn't shown up to small groups often, about half the time, sometimes doesn't participate. So we can look at that, we can look at their OLS scores and pull all the data together to get a better picture of what's going on with our kiddo.
And now you can see what my psychos watch on YouTube. So some of the questions from the chat. So Robin, how long do you keep kids in tier 2? So it's a 6-week cycle, and they cycle out every 6 weeks. We use the interim. So the one we give at the end of every cycle. Wasn't already. So yeah, I would say, like, if they were really low on DIBELS, they're going to be really low on iReady. So I think that if something flagged in DIBELS, they would take that into consideration. But as you can see, they've got that holistic view that is insane that they can make those one-off determinations. But the 50%, what percent of students go to tier 3? You know, that is interesting. We have, it's about 20%, I would say right now. Those are the red kids. So when she mentioned McCam, that's tier 3. So it wasn't the majority of their class. It was probably 20% of them. And then referred to special ed. I mean, we're able to catch a lot of them. A lot of what we get in tier 3 are kids who just haven't schooled or haven't schooled well. Sometimes maybe coming from a different situation where it was a little more lax, so we get right on it and get them moving, and they're usually okay to either stay in tier 3 or go up. We did have a list at one point. We do keep a list of those we are thinking about, because if they've scored like 3 or 4 grade levels below, we have them on track to, you know, like we're looking at these guys hard for a SPED referral. Like we're going to go through all the processes, but we are tracking them. But a lot of them, so the first one, Heather's not here, but we scared her with a list of like 100 and I think somewhere around 140, 142. She's like, no, you're not referring that many kids to SPED. We're like, don't worry, Heather, we have a plan. We have a plan. Is your state a 4-tier system? Shelly, do we technically call SPED tier 4? I think we do. Ish.
Not an official thing in our state. I know that some states, they actually add that on as tier 4. I have always kind of seen it that way. In my opinion, the tier system isn't a pyramid, it's a kite, because you should have your, above your tier 1 kid, you should have your advanced kids, and they kind of bring it back up. Anyway. But, and then it should get smaller as we go down to our self-contained kids. But yeah, it's not an official thing in Utah, but we do kind of consider it that way.
Awesome questions. Do they adjust their instructional map based on student performance? So the main one where they map out the standards, so tier 1, is that the question?
Just in general, how is that curriculum map a living, breathing document based on what the students are needing to learn?
Yeah, so I guess it gets because there's 2 curriculum maps usually, because there's the tier 1 and then the tier 2 that they create for those small groups. The tier 1, yeah, it fluctuates based on those OLS, that OLS tab. Like if they're doing great getting the standard, then they just keep moving. If they don't, then they'll scale it back. But it's really teacher owned, and very well. Is your K3 literacy program a portion of the So Robin, could you just kind of talk to me a little bit about what you mean by my K3 literacy program?
Yeah, a lot of our states have this, and I know Megan highlighted it. That was a big focus. And it's really much like a tiered program if you read the statute. So I was just curious if you had them kind of one and the same instead of running 2 separate programs, that they were really mirror image of each other, that they're running the same way.
Yeah, so they are and they aren't. We use Burst. So in Dibble's, Burst is Dibble's friend that they put in groups and whatnot. It's been amazing. It's our first year using it, and it's incredible. So in that program itself, it's a little different because our main literacy director has to put them into groups, and then their progress monitored within the actual curriculum, and then it just depends. So it's not a perfect little pretty 6-week cycle with them. So they're kind of off from the cycle sometimes when it comes to Dibbles. So literacy is taken different. iReady, we use math K through 8. So they do that and they do this. So our K3 are sure working hard, but we're seeing some really amazing results there. But so yeah, it's tiered for sure. They do the exact same thing but we don't use the interim. We use the Dibbles beginning of year, benchmark, middle of year. It is. And heaven bless my staffing this year. I'll just shout that out for whoever helped me out, like figure that out, because I do have someone that is really hyper focused on that. I'll bring her in one time. She's amazing. All right. Over to Becky. Nice. Hey, thanks for letting me share, guys. That was fun. You got to see all the way down to student level and all the great things happening in the 3-5 world. All right, Beck.
Hey, Beck, you want me to share the slides? Okay, I'll share them. You talk.
Okay. Hey guys, and this is kind of weird because that other computer is recording on screencast. Let's hope it has enough battery. This is also fun. Can you hear me okay though? Because this one is just computer audio. Okay, sweet. Will you please make that just like its own slide and not like or this is fun just to have people like go by command. Okay, perfect. That will help. Like Megan said, that's okay. Now it's too complicated. Like Megan said, we are in school turnaround. So we were identified as a school that was in the bottom percentage, and we got all of this help with people coming in and identifying our needs and went through this plan and made a school improvement plan. It took a lot of work and a lot of effort, and these are our goals tied to a need. Oh, now my system wants to restart. Nope. So you can see we always have our language arts and our math and our grad rates. And you know what's crazy is how grad rates used to be a third of that pie chart. Now it's like 11%, right? We know that testing opt-out is a big need and a big indicator. We need to get more kids there, so we really want to reduce that. And then our teacher retention rates. And actually, we changed that to staff retention rates. I should update that. Next slide, please, Miss. Thank you. One thing I wanted to kind of just like share in the beginning is kind of where we started with our vision in the very beginning. I'm kind of super passionate about a team not really buying in or standing behind any hard hills to climb or change happening if they don't know why. You know, they have to have that value in sight, and they have to have that common vision and common goal, or else it just becomes a checklist and something that's for someone else, and it's useless, and that's a number and not a human. And so Desi and I and Brittany worked really hard at the beginning of this year to instill our school vision, which is really powerful, and it's our passionate commitment to individualized instruction leads us to reach all students at their own level, guiding each one to make real progress and feel the joy of learning and achievement, both measured and intuitive. And what I love about that is that's human. Like, that's a human. That's an individual taking real progress and feeling the joy of learning, right? That's our vision. That's why we were founded. That's like who we are. At the end of the day, when we hear stories that, like we heard today in our tactical about Paul Glatton was at an event and mom's like, your school saved my son's life, and all these things. That's why, you know, our founding fathers founded this school, was for that vision. And I never want us to veer from that vision, because that's like our truth. That's why we're here. That's our grounding. And even though we have data and numbers, and we have accountability, and we have metrics, and we have just thing after thing, I think the further we take this from the teachers, we're gonna take that grounding from them. So we really try to keep the vision in place, even though we have a ton of measures that we have to, because the vision is how you get there, right? Without that, like you won't get there. So these three little pieces, the vision, then there's our little pie chart. Then I made this infographic because the school improvement plan is just so fun and intense. And then the next slide kind of breaks it down a little bit better. The three main goals to improve are grad rate, state assessment, staff retention. The three strategies: engagement, testing, and assessment, and staff retention. So then you see how there's three strategies. Within each strategy, there's 2 milestones. So it's like these little milestones to hit this strategy. And then those strategies will make those school goals, right? So credit recovery, our engagement MTSS system, with testing and assessment is all that state accountability, everything I'll be showing you in a minute, all of this student tracking in-house, our big end-of-year testing school plan, individualized grade level testing plans, and for our staff retention, we have individualized PD plans and a system where we're trying to just figure out this equitable roles and responsibilities types of thing. And I won't go over these next ones in very much detail, but I think this is a good indicator about how often we kind of measure and go into these things. We meet with our school vendor, UEPC, every other week on our opposing week that we don't meet with you guys. And we have accountability forums. So this is our biweekly one. So these 1.1, 1.2, those are action steps within those milestones that meet those strategies, right? And we mark, I know, Megan, you're impressed. We're marking if they've not started, if they're on track, or if they've completed, and the blue one's that completed it. And the yellow is, what is that one? I can't read it, but yeah. And so we do that that's our bi-weekly one. And the next page, I think, probably shows like our monthly accountability form. There's like a monthly form, a bi-weekly one, bi-monthly one. This is a bi-week. I forget what kind of, there's different ones, but we talk about these a lot and we get the data a lot. And we have, this morning we met and we have just different people in place to kind of help gather this data because it's a lot. I think this system and structure of just managing this plan, like implementing the plan and the structure of the plan has been intense. But for today's purposes, and I recognize this is academic data focused, and we really want to know our students learning. Let's look for the next slide for a minute. And I asked Desi to talk about how we determined the one above it are these goals, because see how they're kind of different. They don't say, oh, we were 26 proficient in language arts last year, and this year we're going to be 36 because we're not doing SAGE again. Right? We can't make that comparison. Thanks, Des.
Yeah, so when we were there was like 5 of us humans in a room trying to figure out this goal, trying to wrap our head around it. And the problem with saying we want to raise our scores by 10% is, one, we aren't even going to have the same assessment next year. And 2, we've done that for the past however many years and it hasn't happened. So we didn't want to keep doing, what hasn't worked before. So our needs assessment, was his name Paul? I feel like his name was Paul. The guy that came in and he did
Shepherd, yeah.
Okay, yeah. He did our a needs assessment for what we needed to do for our turnaround plan. And something that he brought up that was kind of like an aha moment for us was look at what the state's average is and be competitive with the state. So we already kind of mentioned that with ACT, we've been pretty darn competitive with the state average. So it's the same thing there with the ACT. We're like, we want to raise by 1 point or whatever. But shifting that focus and that mindset of instead of having the goal of a certain number, to be within a certain range of the state average. So that's where this goal came from. So 2017, 2018, we were within 40% of the state average. So we were about, we weren't quite half as much as the state. We were a little bit higher. So our next year we want to be within 30% of the state average. And that's kind of tricky because it doesn't give us an exact number, but that does equate to growth because we are going to be working to grow all of our students. And our hope is that we are competitive with the state. So wherever that lands with this new assessment, our goal is to be within 30% of that state average. So I hope I explained that so that everyone can kind of understand where we came from.
Thank you. Yeah, because these conversations, these are hours of conversations, right? Okay, so let's dive into, next slide. I've been doing, and here's some other background. Because of this whole school, in my opinion, because of this whole school turnaround process and getting the whole school year started and our new UA Plus, I love it. I feel like right now we finally have a really good solid foundation, right? So all of these things we're showing you right now, it's like if this was 2 weeks later, we'd have twice as many things because it's all just we took our interim like a week and a half ago. And so like, you know what I mean? It's just all happening right now because now we know it all and we're going. Natalie Niederhauser teaches Math 2 Essentials. So Math 2, the math department's already created their entire structure around differentiation off the bat, meaning kids that were low in Math 1, like last year that didn't, maybe got a C or a D because they teamed up, the Math 1 team and Math 2, and were like, yeah, they didn't, you know, they barely passed Math 1. We knew they were already going to need help in Math 2. We already grouped them and put them in a Math 2 Essentials class, like right off the bat. And then, and then after the benchmark assessments, we were able to see which other kids needed to be. So Natalie N, Math 2, they're 10th graders. They're the students that, for lack of a better word, just need things really remediated and pared down. Same standards, but they need extra, you know, they need, so she's working, she has to dial in a lot to their work. Some of the questions that, will you go to the next slide, or did you, no, that's perfect. Do you have that YouTube, Meg, in your email? Because, or maybe Angie, did you get it? Someone that's good at it. This one is 7 minutes. So this I want you to look for. Look for how, because here's the questions that I know always come up. And like find them, like see what you can see. Like, what does she do with this data? What does this data mean to her? How does she change in her classroom because of it? And what's awesome about this conversation, because I had it with her in her DDI, like she's processing out loud. Like she didn't prep this. Like she's processing out loud. She's like, oh, I had this aha moment. So it's like, it's really, really good. And it's just 7 minutes and I think you'll enjoy it. Thanks, Ange.
In PLC to kind of just wrap your mind around individual student growth. I have started doing a lot of assignments where students have to do it by hand. So if let's see, I'm going to share my desktop really quick. So I've got a folder, which again, I know that's a whole other thing. I've got a folder with 1 million assignments in it. And this gives me an opportunity to go back and, for example, look at student work, where they started. I did a lot of the first couple of lessons where I would take a snippet of their work. I would kind of give them hints, give them kind of a direction of where to go. And then where I went with that is now I'm more to the point where with their assignments, I'm giving them feedback more in a way where it's just, using words rather than me actually showing them the steps. So what I mean by that is I want them to become more familiar with the vocabulary. So I'm doing a little bit less of, like I said, showing the actual algebra behind a step and more using the vocabulary to help them understand. So, but going back to this, so in my documents, my MTSS documents, one thing that I've been doing that's been kind of nice is I've been comparing just in the last week my benchmark to my interim. So my benchmark had 20 questions on it, and of those 20 questions, 8 of those questions I placed on my interim, and my interim was 15 questions. So about 50% of my interim came from my benchmark. So it gave me an opportunity to see a couple of things. One thing that I did is I based up their score. So for example, you take Tim Adamson. Okay, on the benchmark, he did not get this question right. On the interim, he did. So what I did, again, 0 being wrong, 1 being right. What I did is I'm tracking their growth versus whether they're just proficient, meaning that if they got it the first time and got it the second time, then I one was neither. Like they're not showing any progress. So it was kind of interesting to see, because you can see on each question that I've done so far, if you go and you look through some of these students, you know, they might have made growth on two of the concepts, like take Isaac, for example. But then on this other concept, okay, well, this is algebra based. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of an idea out of Isaac. I'm going to say, okay, Isaac's geometry, maybe a little bit more geometry minded. He's grown a little bit in terms of his geometry skills, but in terms of algebra, looks like he's still not getting it, like order of operations. He might be able to take a shape and manipulate something out of that shape, but when it comes to algebra, not so much. So then what that does for me is when I come to my class each day, I can pull Isaac and say, okay, Isaac, well, it looks like we weren't really making much progress here. It looks like I've noticed you're still struggling with order of operations. So I can pull up some examples. We can work one-on-one, again, creating that idea of the small groups. So that's kind of been nice so far. Again, this is allowing me to really dive deeper into the assessment side of it. And what I mean by that is my interim, my benchmark, looking deeper into that, because I feel like with my assignments, you're going to see again, like on some of these guys' my student work that I have, okay? They're submitting individual questions or individual assignments, and that gives me an opportunity to find their mistakes, find where they're going wrong, and I can kind of see that through class. So that's kind of, tell you, Tim, if I look at my MTS document, that's also something that's great. My overall data, I can see where he's gone in terms of where he started and where he has and ended as far as our interim, or from our benchmark to our interim. But I want more detailed information. I think that's where those assignments come into play. So that's been kind of nice. Again, I like this assignment or assessment comparison, because I can even go to the bottom and I can look at the very bottom, and I've kind of given myself an idea of, okay, of my 85 students or 84 students, okay, 43% of them have shown growth in this question. Okay, 30% of them are proficient in it. Okay, so that means that they've still got that gap. I don't total to make 100% growth or proficiency, right? I'm still lacking a good 30% or less than that are still not understanding that concept. So that helps me understand, is this something I need to go back on? This is one thing that I thought was interesting, is this barely, out of the two of these, if you combine those, it's like, 50% roughly. So half of my class is still struggling with a concept that they shouldn't be. We're jumping into volume right now, and it makes sense why my student, this number is now making sense to me. Now I know even more why these kids are having a hard time with volume. It's not the formula, it's the order of operations that they still struggle with. So that's great, because now when I'm teaching order of operations, focus isn't on the formula, memorizing it, it's the steps of plugging it into the formula and taking that algebra.
Thanks. Sorry, I feel so bossy. I hate feeling bossy. I don't know what's on the middle of our screen, Angie. Maybe it's like an IM box or something. But I kind of wanted to maybe try to answer some of these questions along the way. So this is a math class, and Robin's question was, in the high school, our Tier 2 supports based on current course needs, meaning Math 2 needs, to skill gaps proactively based on a universal screener or skill gaps. So maybe you need to restate it with your voice, because I think I'm not.
That's because I had a typo. My fingers move faster than my brain sometimes. So high school, are we using a universal screener to target those skill gaps and then putting small groups together based on that universal screener? Or are the teachers identifying gaps as they're going through lessons and then putting in that targeted support?
Both. That's kind of what she's showing.
Okay.
So the math team, their readiness they created their readiness assessment and their interims. The math did. their Math 1 used iReady. The 9th graders can go into iReady, so that's one. That's more of a universal screener. But the math team made their bench, their baseline ones and their interim ones, which would be like a universal, like a data point, right? Then they also have the SAGE data from last year, and it all shows on this MTSS stuff to kind of be able to see. But yeah, that's kind of maybe the objective or the theme of this, in my opinion, is that student growth and student learning, which is the goal, right, is given and shown to teachers in a lot of ways, and they're taking in these data points often, and it's streamlined in a way because it's all based on the state standards, right? Every lesson is, every benchmark question is, that it's all streamlined. But in this instance, and the ones she's showing us on this point is the assessment. It's the comparison of her assessments. It's the comparison when she takes the bench line and the baseline and the interim, and is like, did this kid grow? Is he proficient or not at all? But that's one view. That's one assessment, right? So then she was showing us that student work with how she grades it and circles something. She'll also show us another one. I don't know if that helped. Does that even answer your question?
My mouse wasn't working. Yes, in that is awesome. Like, I love the tracker. I love the color coding. I love that she has a baseline. She's assessing the students, seeing who grew, who didn't, targeting those students who didn't make growth. And so that's all tier 1, right? And so then after she targets the students who doesn't make growth and they're still not understanding the concept, is that when they become tier 2? Like, what's that differentiation of when that transition occurs?
Mm-hmm. Yep. After the end of each interim cycle, that's when she would be able, like right now, she'd be able to see, okay, these kids still didn't get it. They need more with equations. She's going to have to go back and add way more algebra processes instead of going for her whole class, because half her class is, that's what she talked about. Math 1, Natalie R. talked about the same thing. She's like, we have to go back and do graphing. We're probably not going to get to unit 6, so, and that's where it comes in with they're changing their curriculum maps, because, they can realize, like, if over 75%, if over that many kids aren't getting it, yes. And this particular teacher has her course set up in a way that only, like, most of her class is small groups and differentiation. Like, her class is built that way. It's really difficult to explain, and I'll explain it when we have more time. But so yeah. And I actually went and watched her class this morning because, I've been working on this for a few days. So I'm like, I'm going to go see this in action today. Okay, so then if there's a few kids that need help, then that, yes. I think that in the high school, like, I don't think that there's like a beautiful academic way of being like, this group's in tier 2 for this reason, and this is what they're going to get for this amount of time, like a perfect structure like that. You know what I'm saying? Like when I taught first grade, I'd be like, these kids are level D, and we're going to teach level D for 3 weeks, and I'm going to have my small group of level D, right? Because think of our variables, right? Like, who's turning in quizzes or not, who's coming to class, or there's just lots of variables that have to make that kind of a system function well. And so our teachers have a list of ways they differentiate and a list of ways they figure out which students are growing and learning standards, and a list of ways they make that all piece together, like in reality. And we're really trying to, honestly, right now, figure out how to compile all of that into a view like this, right?
Totally get it, Becky. I think the tracking and everything is outstanding, and I think the targeted instruction's outstanding. And I was trying to understand from a tiered system, and I'm not as worried, I guess, maybe about a tiered system as high school as I am in elementary, right? Because the focus shifts. We focus on earning those credits, and we focus on graduation and filling in the gaps. But I was just trying to understand, because it was presented as MTSS, and I wanted to make sure that I had a clear understanding. So really, based on this presentation, and if I'm understanding correctly, and if I'm not, correct me, is really what you're doing is you're targeting standards and you're providing targeted instruction to those students that haven't shown growth after instruction, and you're providing that differentiated instruction, trying to see then if they make growth, and then at that point in time is when you're identifying students for additional support and possibly calling it tier 2. Is that
Yeah, you just
getting now?
yeah,
Okay.
you did my job. Good job. How explaining it.
Yeah.
I know I often think about like how to mirror it in brick and mortar, and I was thinking, you know, I was sitting when I was sitting in math in high school and the teacher was teaching the concept for 20 minutes, right? And we pulled out our workbooks to do our work. Think of this virtually. What would that teacher do? He'd walk around and he'd go help. Would he group the kids and like bring up these kids for division? He would go and help them with their step they're at. With, you know, they'd raise their hand. I need help with this fractions part. I need help with this part of the process. Oh, you failed this quiz yesterday. Redo it. Oh wait, come get this. You know, they like it's all within the day, within the week. It's not like he waits till 2 weeks later and gathers all this data, then brings his high school kids back at another time of the day to teach them fractions, right? Like it's embedded in that whole, and that's why our class times are longer, 90 minutes, because they have to do that all in those 90 minutes. But that's why they're awesome at what they do, because think of how hard that, like it's a lot, you know? Okay, should we end it for a couple of minutes or are we done? Do we have any more questions about it? Like we don't have to watch the rest of it. We don't want to. Let's finish it.
So the second half of the problem rather than the first half of the problem. Okay. Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. Or, oh, I'm kind of connecting the dots, but also allows me to create those small groups a lot easier because I can see they're not progressing or growing in certain topics. So can I give you this setup or this explanation, and can you turn around and finish it? You know, like I know based off of certain students, just because of their assignments that they've turned in. Okay, well for Nathan, I know that he really is actually great at the setup, or excuse me, the finish. So like he struggled with the setup, you know. So for me, this is nice because I'm giving him that kind of, okay, here's how we go from here, and I know he can finish out the problem, and then hopefully it helps him for the next one.
Thanks so much, Ange. Little Zoom Pro. Do I have any more slides, Meg? Okay. Yeah, one thing also that I think we're just getting into these discussions about student learning, right? And how students actually show that they've learned something virtually, right? We have a high transiency rate, you know, and it's like if our growth and proficiency data is never really showing that it's improving, is that because it's not? Is that because we're not tracking it right? And so like the math team, especially with these processes and these DDIs, sometimes it's the way they look at how, like if a kid just gets a 5 on an online quiz, maybe that kid cheated. Or that's what Natalie R. found out with her graphing one. She went and did one-on-one work with each of them and found out they actually can't do it. They just figured out how to take the quiz, right? Like they're diving into these steps within the actual math concepts. And we're like figuring out they don't know fractions. Instead of just here's a lesson, teach a lesson, drill a lesson, get a point. Like we know that growth is so huge for our students that we're going to teach them addition and subtraction, even though the standard is like volume, because they're not going to be able to do a vault. Like we got to start somewhere. But the gaps are so wide, and it is work, but we're getting there. And it's exciting. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Becky. I jumped into Math PLC Monday. It was an awesome conversation. I think, as Becky said, we're just starting on some of this stuff. As you can see, it's not a perfect process. I don't know that we'll ever have a perfect process, but we're just starting to dive into this. I don't think we've been at this level ever before. So it's messy, and love all the help and support that we're getting along our journey. But in that Math PLC, the conversation there was, as Becky said, talk about differentiated instruction. We have a group of basically credit recovery students that have failed, and these are low students. We used iReady
there's students in there on a 3rd, 4th, 5th grade math level. The conversation with that teacher was, how can I give them a passing grade when they're never going to hit Math 1 proficiency? So we had that discussion about proficiency not being a passing grade, and Robin, you had alluded to that earlier, that's a whole different ballgame, and that's messy too. And then we're talking about student growth to say, hey, well, what if, you could grow them from a 3rd grade to a 7th grade level? I mean, that would be huge. No, they would never be proficient in those math, but that growth, which is a huge part of that chunk of our school grade, would be huge. So these are discussions we're having. We don't have the answers. If you guys find research and data on any of these things, jump into our PLC meetings, DDIs. We're trying to figure this out as we go. UEPC is also on this journey with us and helping us out dig into this data. I do need to add in too, before we move on, guys, is this school turnaround plan is one of the most nightmarish, biggest plans I have ever been a part of. And it's intense. We could probably spend a 3-hour block reviewing it and going over that. So the fact that Becky's managing that and then managing some of these other things of just managing the school is a huge feat. It's not all Becky, Desi, Brittany that are here representing high school too, are just huge pieces of that. As well as our school leadership team. So there's a whole other side to this that's happening that we're not presenting today, but it's a really big piece. In fact, I told UEPC they should have came today because we meet with them on the off cycles. So every Wednesday, right, we have this block of meeting. On the other meeting, we meet with UEPC for about the same amount of time and report back on different goals, all in support of accountability, keep in mind. All right. That vent. Let's switch subject. Academics is the best part of this presentation for sure. So we'll jump into these other minor details on the slides here. All right, so I'm going to go through these are some of our stakeholder retention items. I'm going to switch back and forth with Luann. Luann's going to be my partner in crime here. As I mentioned before, we've aligned our goals. And with that alignment and our new student services team, I'm like grinning from here. I couldn't be more excited about how Luann has enacted this vision to fully support our academic goals in her role with her team. So I can't wait. She's going to show you some things that it blows my mind. Anyways, jumping to the task at hand, stakeholder satisfaction. This is our student first check-in results right now. This is our goal. I put in 2% increase. William, I hope that was the right. I know we had that conversation. Anyways, that's what I put for goal. That we are hoping to get a 2%. That would be our 2% increase. Is that 73%? Our first pulse check was a 57. Our current data shows us at a 70. So improvement already over the first 3 pulse checks. And this will tie into retention. Remember that number when I get there in just a minute. Surprise, surprise, right? But all of this other stuff on the slide here shows we're measuring, we have our baseline data, but we also have lead data that we're looking at too. Lead measures in how we are predicting how the student first pulse checks are, how are they going to turn out? How do we know what components, what other ways can we measure this? And this that you see on the board here is all Luann's team. This is everything that they're doing to support the data they're tracking, what they're looking at, and the strategies and action plans that they have in place. And like I mentioned here, in just a minute, once we get through our trackers here, our overviews, then Luann can kind of share a little bit more into that. So middle school, same format here. We're currently ahead of our goal. We jumped again, so it'll be interesting to see that trend moving forward throughout our pulse checks. We have so many student pulse checks, so we'll continue to eye that. And then here is high schools, where we are moving upward. You know what's interesting with this one is I think what we saw last year, I didn't pull it this time, at the end of the year I will, but last year what we saw is as passing rates went up, because we made a dramatic increase on our passing rates, our student satisfaction went up. And it's not, I mean, Michelle, yeah, you shake your head, you're like, yeah. Like, but, right, like if they're succeeding, they're happy. And that is the simplest concept. So I think that's one of the things that we look at is this is what I call lag data, right? Like the lead measure here is going to be things like our passing rates and engagement and our students logging in. Because if they are successful, and I know we've talked about this in a lot of other national calls and such, you know, that they're more at risk when they're not engaged and they're not passing. It just, to me, it's silly because it's so much common sense, right? Okay, I'm going to dive a little, we're going to keep going through just a second, and then I'll turn it over and share with you. So I had to add this slide in because this is a celebration brag moment for just 2 seconds before we dive a little bit deeper. Our morale ranking is, I could put it over here, second in the nation, is the highest, and I believe this school is like new and small. Anyways, I thought it was really cool. Our satisfaction wasn't there, but our morale was. What the difference is, somebody can share with me later, besides the type of questions. But that's fun to see. And you know what else I thought was cool when I was looking at this data is you see the year over year is small, right? A 3% increase. That means it was this high a year ago and we've maintained it. I think that is a whole different level at this point, right? Because we came in a bunch of changes, blah, blah, and now it's maintained, because maintaining sometimes is tougher than getting to that point. So I think that's just a huge celebration. I want to shout out my team and their work with that. So with that, here's our teacher pulse check data. I'll explain what this little chart is here at the bottom just a second. Our goal is 90%. Once again, a 2% increase over last year. We want to take it from an 88 to a 90, which is, that's going to be a tough goal, but we're up for the challenge to get a 90. So we're going to be leading. We want to lead the nation in this, is I believe one of our team's goals here. Our baseline is, so we've only had one teacher pulse check, right? So that is our baseline and our current data. It was low for elementary at 64%. It was, I'm going to grin and Angie had a special education teacher call her and say, I'm sorry, we have this issue and we're going to rate it low on the pulse checks, and this is why. Anyways, they got the attention they needed. They got the help they needed, and I believe all issues are resolved at this moment in time. I can't wait for number 2 to come out. Anything
Could you
else
call me before you fill out the check next time? That'd be great. Just give me a jingle. We'll figure it out.
No, they were cute. I think that's great that they know that we're using that, addressing their needs, right? Like, it's a data point we're using, and they're like, fine, then I'm going to show you, which is what it's for, right? So now we got some good baseline data to show some improvements. I can't wait for 2. But what I will add is that I talked about the 90-day plans. Angie, in her weekly tactical meeting, part 2, Michelle, I know you've watched this, she reviews each of these. These are her lead measures that she's tracking for her goals. She just added number 4 here, staff and student culture. I know you mentioned that you just add that. That was one of the adjustments you made after we met after our quarterly. You're like, hey, I'm missing culture, which says something. We were at a high level, and I think we were just riding that wave for just like, we got this figured out, and then it was like, yeah, we need to pay attention to it. So that's being added now, and on the next slide, because it's middle school and the data is a little bit the same. But this shows another screenshot of, this is what she discussed today in that meeting with her leadership team, specifically when they got to goal 4 of what their plans are for addressing culture, both staff and teacher. These are their action items, and then they report back. Anyways, the goal again, 90%, we're at 67. It's added to the 90-day plan for strategies, and just once again paying attention to that. And then our high school teacher pulse check, which kind of blows my mind considering our label as a turnaround school and this intense, we pulled teachers out of their classrooms for meeting at 88%. Becky, Desi, and Brittany have paid a lot of attention through the change process, and I think teacher feedback has been a huge part of this. So anything else you want to add, Becky, to your pulse check data that's outstanding right now?
I think that there goes a lot to say with people above me trying to also give financial perks and benefits, like, hey, you're working hard and you're coming back, and here's a, that goes a long way. That makes people feel really respected. for the hard work they do. And I don't think that's really ever been in place until Megan understood that principle and came on board. But yeah, it's been a stressful year. So this makes me really happy. I think that they love their students and they have it's that same why, it's that same passion, no matter how hard it is.
Thanks, Becky. And then I saw the question, how does this rate? So I pulled the chart. I pulled out my ops app, threw some charts together, and looked at teacher, although I couldn't figure out how to overlay the charts. I did not have that level of Excel, nor was I going to waste my time in trying to YouTube it. So you'll just have to look for purposes, especially because the pulse checks and student first check-ins are different timing. So what you see here is you got teacher pulse check. This goes from last year. The blue line is last year of the pulse check in the high school. And then the red dot is just the one that we've had. And then same format for the one below. So the blue line is all of last year's student first check-in. And the orange line is this year's check-in results, just to kind of compare there. And the question is, does it correlate? And I don't need data. Like I told Michelle I had a soapbox. I don't need data to tell me that it does. I'm passionate and I believe it does. We put a lot of energy and effort, and this group knows that. The Central Region knows that and has been great in supporting that. Last year, we put a lot of intense effort into increasing our teacher satisfaction, as we view that the teachers are the ones working with the students day in and day out. And if we're ever going to get, as Becky mentioned, a turnaround plan, if we had to implement that when teacher satisfaction was low, we're not going to succeed at it. So all these academic changes, not really changes, but I guess fidelity, and I hate using the word buy-in too. I just think when you have a staff that believes, as Becky said, believes in your vision and mission, it's going to drive student success. And as I mentioned before, student success equals happy students, engaged students, and retained students, right? So that's how I view it.
Meg, I also just want to say one more thing. I've noticed that this team has been very good at giving up, like, hey, we're all in this together. And that empowers the teams to come up with these systems and structures and ideas, and peers to peers motivate each other way more than us to them, and not micromanaging. Like that's been so big. That's such a big part. I can't say that enough, giving them that power.
Well, and I have to say too that as you're having these discussions, you're having your PLCs and you're determining that there might be a change that you need to make, having this group of happy families will mean that they'll adapt to that change better because they'll understand it. You've built this culture with your families as well that, hey, if we find something's not working for you guys, we might make a change and this is why. So I think I see that with the students first check-ins being up there and they're happy, so they're more willing to accept those pieces.
Yep. Agreed. So same logic here. This is middle school. So blue is last year's data. The yellow or the orange is this year's. You can just read that graph there for just a minute before I flip to K5. You just see similar trends. Just interesting to when they're both high. Good. All right. With that, Luann, if you want to share actually, you know what? I'm going to go over just the retention data, and then I'm going to turn over to you, Luann, so that you can pull up that document and share the whole thing. Her document and MTSS that she works with relates to retention and culture. Stakeholder, both pieces play a part. So this is elementary school. This is fascinating to pull these apart, and I've done a lot of digging in these. I didn't add the keys, Michelle. You said that in tactical this morning. I forgot. But the orange is the returning. The blue is the new students. The dotted line is the goal for both. And then the faint line is where we were last year. So the returning students, we've leveled out on. I bet we'll hit our goal there. What was interesting to me is the driver of our new students. I calculated K5 that 90% of our withdrawals in K5 have been new students. Here's where it gets really interesting is I pulled the withdraw dashboard and trying to find trends. I couldn't really find any on just the data. I'm looking at the data and the withdrawal reasons. The number one withdrawal reason was our student wasn't motivated to work in this environment. Blah, blah, blah. What does that mean, right? Like we're just using that as a withdrawal reason. I went into the open-ended comments, and I mean, feel free if you want to go check this out, because don't take my word for it. It is alarming to see. The number of families that left an open-ended comment in K-5 indicating they wanted a more traditional homeschool environment. I shared that with the team this morning. I just have to pull it up, and it's right there. It's right in my face. All these parent comments that said they wanted more flexibility in meaning they could do math one week and then English one week, or they didn't have to go to class, or they didn't have to. And I think there's a lot of proactive ways we could work on that and getting them enrolled and improving expectations more clear up front of who we are and what we are, because we also have a 95% class connect attendance in our K-3A program. And we are not a homeschool. I don't know what else to put that. That kids are going to come to class. We do have an async program for those that qualify, but they need to prove that they are academically ready and able to be in an async track, right? And Angie and her team monitor that, and if they dip below, they got to come to class. We have to provide instruction and tiered interventions to these families. So that one's a really interesting one to me. Luann has some things that she's working on with her team to help improve Strong Start as a possible solution to this driver of our K-5 new students that are leaving us at a very alarming rate. But I also think that the tight structure is moving them out, and that we could be more clear in our enrollment scripts and how we're messaging what our K-5 program is and what it is not. And then you'll see the same a little bit in our middle school, not as drastic, right? But we're still above, and we're definitely above the goal line there. 81% of our withdrawals here have been new students. What I calculated, a lot were student behavior issues in this age group. That was interesting to see a lot of the comments saying I can't control my student, which is one of the reasons why they clicked the student not motivated to learn button. So it's just more interesting to get into the details of what does student not motivated to learn mean, so that we can help provide some solutions to that. And then lastly, our high school. This one is fascinating too, because our returning students are staying at a very amazing rate, which is good for so many reasons. But that's cool to see. But once again, we're seeing our new students are our driver. And where that is a trend that I saw K through 12, it's something we got to look at a little bit closer, as I mentioned, of some proactive measures and how we can support those families into what our program is. The cool thing with seniors, this is cool, is I took a look in this stat over here that 27% that withdrew were seniors. 36, here's the number, not percent, but the number. We had 36 newly enrolled seniors that withdrew. And this is on purpose. We identified and target with our grad task force team students that were newly enrolled that were so credit deficient that they were not going to graduate, right? And then we helped transition them out with an exit code that is not going to count as a dropout on our exit code. So while that's alarming, it's actually good news that we're getting to those students now and not till the end of the year.
Can I say something real quick?
Quickly, yeah.
We've been doing tier 4 meetings with our kid engagement process as well. This is just addressing one of the questions. So like why they left their brick and mortar and came here. And that's one of the questions that the counselors have been asking them and just asking. And it's so interesting to me because every tier 4 meeting that I've been in, these are kids that are not engaged, failing all their classes, like have been struggling all year. And every single one they've asked like why they've come and why if they like it here. And every single student has said, it's so much better. I love it so much. So in their minds, they're so much happier. But then that opens up like the conversation of, okay, did you know you have these other options? And Sam, our transition counselor, does those better than I've ever heard anyone else. But the counselors have really started to take that on to really open up those conversations with students, which has been really cool.
Great. I was looking through the chat to see what I missed on questions. Sorry if I missed any. Perfect. Luann, you're driving. You're up.
Mute off. Yes. Can you see this goal name, goal description? Okay, excellent. These are the goals for our next 90 days as the Student Services team. everything that we do, we are working to support the K-8 and the high school goals. And that means tracking students that we are working with, tracking their passing rates, their iReady participation, their diagnostic completion, and LCU completion as well. So these are just some of the goals that we have set. And then in each one of these areas, we can see the strategies that we're using to meet this goal. And I can send this out to you so that you can look at it a little bit closer. We're using data to decide, is this strategy working, and the data didn't support continuing it. However, this week is our cohort week for Strong Start in November, and she had 38 students attend her iReady Power Hour yesterday. So although it doesn't support maybe continuing, you know, every single week, this data I think that we're going to follow is going to support that they want that first week. And so we're really fluid in looking at what the needs are and then adapting and putting in place some strategies to help meet the high school goals. Again, this is our Learning Coach University, and Cami is working really hard to get that. We're looking at the needs, so you know she could see that, okay, our returning families, they're like, I've been here, I don't need it, but it is required, and there are some things that change. So she just finished that LCU Simplified, and she sent that out, and I think it was 2 days she had 100 more. So, you know, we're working hard to make sure we're adapting to meet our goals with the needs that are there. And our Student Services MTSS, we are tiered. We're working with the high school tiered engagement plan, and we're helping support that. We're also supporting that iReady diagnostic, because that's, you know, that's huge. We've got to have that happen before those teachers can start teaching. They need to know where these students are, and so we're really working hard to share that with our families. And I do want to just share a different screen, and I don't know how to share other than turn off, turn on. Sorry about that. Okay, so now you can see here. Can you see this document that says SOS Team Data Tracker? Okay, good. So this is our data tracker that we use as a team to track where we're going, what we're doing. So each week my team breaks it down to their caseload, breaks it down in grade level, who they're exiting, home visits, and this is Strong Start specific. So we're looking at all of the Strong Start specific things. Each one of my department members is filling this out each week so that we can follow that. The other thing, though, that we're really working hard to do, this is our tracker for referrals. So as these families are being referred to us, so they've gone through Tier 1, then we're moved to Tier 2 with our mentors, and then at Tier 3, and then finally admin is Tier 4. So my team is working with these as they're coming to this Tier 3, and we're tracking their passing rates. We want to start, this is a new column that we just put in because we recognize that that is something that K-8 wants to track in their 90-day goals. So we added this component in. We want to track their LCU graduate, and we want to see from week to week how they're doing and how our efforts to remove barriers so that they can be engaged and do well in school, how it's helping them with their passing rates. So we're trying to track that, and we're tracking our Term 1 referrals and who we've exited. We're tracking our Term 2 because I want to see each term and how we're doing with those kids. So those are the things that we're working on. I know we're running short of time. Is there anything else that you want me to cover? One of the things I did want to cover, though, because the pulse check and also our high withdrawal from our new students. So Taylor and I dove into that. We took a look at our pulse checks 1 and 2. We did an internal check-in just with our new families. Taylor did an internal check-in with them, specifically asking some, are you feeling supported 1 to 5? And I can, Michelle, you might be interested in seeing that, so I can send that to you, that survey. But one of the questions was, how likely are you to return or to stay with UTVA? And it was a 1 to 5. And then as she looked at that data as it came in, then she called that family. If it was below, a 4, then she called that family and said, hey, I can see your comments here. How can I help you? How can I support you? Now we're looking at that pulse check number 3 to also see, okay, what are some trends here, and are they new students? And we're targeting those contacts with those families too. So I did want to share the things that we're doing to really focus on that withdrawal rate and see where we can offer more support and remove any barriers. I mean, it might be some barriers, even maybe them understanding why they have to come to class and why we have to have these things. We're trying to remove those barriers so that we can help them be successful, but also stay with us. So any questions?
Thank you, Luann.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank
rock
you so much.
star, a rock star. What she's doing is incredible. And because that program is all funded from Title, we are taking, it's really important that we track academic measures. First of all, that's our goal, but it's also funded from Title. So come our Title audit, we'll be able to show how we're using these programs to increase student academic success. Yay! All right, the end. No, but it really is the end. We have a lot of different efforts going in, and I have a document that I've created for retention and culture, and it's kind of a mess. There's a link in the PowerPoint. You can take a look at that. But our teams are very organized in what they're doing and how they're executing it through their 90-day plans. And that I would suggest, if you wanted to dig deeper, to start in those 90-day plans. There's a lot of specific strategies mentioned in those. And one I want to shout out, Luann, too, that I don't you mentioned was our focus on learning coach feedback. We just had our first family feedback forum today at noon, which was awesome to attend. That's Cami put on, Luann, and some administrators, myself and others were there. So we're trying to leverage that, and that definitely goes into retention culture efforts as well. So thank you, everybody. Michelle, any other questions to close this up?
I think my only question, I just want to thank you all for going into this detail and for allowing us to ask a lot of questions. I know that can feel a little stressful sometimes, and just know that we're asking those questions to fully understand. So thank you for that. My interest is definitely piqued, Becky, in popping into that class like you did today. Can you send me that recording? I love it. I want to see how it's coming out, because I agree that the tracking is amazing, and I want to see how it goes out. So I just wanted to say that before I forget to say it. Thank you, guys. I don't have any other comments. I don't have any other questions. Does anybody else in the room have any other ones?
No, but I'm worried for you because it looks like people behind you are boarding.
Yeah, that's me. I'm B25. I'm B25, but I can see my spot right
now. I'm all anxious. Get on the plane.
No, I'm good.
Angie, I can see your setup is working. You got your cube, your box, your cube in there.
I like your face, Becky.
Angie's in a box.
We have to laugh about something in life, you guys.
She's living in a box. Well, William, you look like you're trying to get a semi to honk.
No, but it is snowing, so it's good. It'll be fun to drive in that.
Hey, thanks for being patient with us in Zoom today, guys. I appreciate you letting us test drive this. I enjoy seeing all your faces a ton. So thanks.
As Angie said when I was there, all of our meetings should be in Zoom. There's no reason.
Yes, but people need to not understand my face is like, sometimes it's just my face. It doesn't mean I'm reacting to anything. Megan's like, as Michelle's face was saying. I'm like, it's my face.
Well, you were like nodding your head. See, we had a communication training a week or so ago. 90% of communication's nonverbal, Michelle. 90, 90. And we were missing out a lot on that, so I could see your head.
I love it. Okay, you guys.
Hey, thanks, you guys.
Thank you. Drive safely, William. It's freaking
out. Guys, have a wonderful day.
The Brady Bunch.
The like million family Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, guys.